Hello, everybody. My name is Phoebe Tran, and I'm a talk show host. This means I talk. You're for sure asking, what's a talk show host doing here about education? Well, in fact, for most of my everyday life, I actually get a chance to work alongside colleagues at a school called CGA, where we guide and teach schooling kids, young adults, and in the process, we examine, question, adjust, and question again to find doable solutions to make education available to everybody globally today. Now, in my line of work, I get to hear some really interesting, deepest desires of my youth counterparts. Some clear and strong, but most are packaged in this vague box. Now, listen to these questions showcasing desires. Please call my name, sister. Chị ơi, gọi tên em đi. Only the Vietnamese Gen Z would probably get that. I really like your English. Or I'm in ABC school and I want XYZ, and my fellow students at DEF school is HIJKL. Now, I often smile with my eyes opened and ask, what's your question? Now, these youths are all looking for ways to be better, right? But it's so hard for them to know how to do so without looking outward. Now, I'm sure most, if not all of us, started our learning life, with standardization. Speaking the same language, goo goo gaga is inappropriate. You gotta say hello. We eat the same diet. We're graded in school on the same scale. And education for almost all of us had been conformity, not individuality. Now, this is a picture you might be familiar with, or not if you were recently born. You'd call it extreme chaos, organized chaos, or Vietnam. It's the place that I innocently started in my education journey, in a desk tucked away in a corner in my family's 10-meter square home. I had this post-Soviet era lamp. Let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so that's the post-Soviet era lamp. And, with the all-American pride innovation, the incandescent light bulb. Now, if that's not enough, that's too much light jargon to handle. I'll add in another one. And I also had a bright fit for a hospital, can keep you awake at night light. And that is the fluorescent bulb. What's the difference? Well, one burns your skin if you touch it, and the other might damage your eyes if you're in the same room with it. Now, through those lights, I learned to write cursive within a square. It has to be from left to right, top to bottom. Any other way gets you a swan. And if you're wondering what that is, that's a grade. Not because a swan is beautiful, but because a swan egg is shaped like a big, fat, round 0. Adding on to that, my legs would often itch underneath the dark table. Now, if there is a basic necessity that causes so much discomfort in early life, it's not eating, it's not sleeping, it's studying. Studying has always been an action to obtain an education, and unlike individuals with distinct personalities, education's effort to measure its consumers had been conformity. For those that are wondering what conformity is, it's grades. Now, how many here love to eat bread? What about apples, noodles? Would you appreciate someone less if they eat bread and you eat rice? Or would you like them less if they can finish dinner in 5 minutes instead of your 2 minutes? Now, if the above differences seem so intuitively normal, why do we judge a person if they dislike science and enjoy Barbie dolls, or if they'd rather read Shakespeare than world history? And why do we judge a person who scores lower than those who score higher on tests? Now, even before grades existed, education has always been, has always shown us what society values. Now, in talking about societal values, let me bring up Socratic, the father of Western philosophy. He notes something like this. He notes, children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers. Oh dear, death to all the debate shows on VTV. I'm in big trouble too. I crossed my legs and I totally thought that my teachers liked me to argue with them. But just like how our fathers can be wrong, the father of philosophy might be wrong too. The world has changed. Now, at this point in 2021, I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. At this point in 2021, the world has 65.5% internet penetration. Before this talk, I Googled education, hoping to find what people tend to search for. And we get this. Now, if you can't read that, well, you can't see learning anywhere. And here you see education department, education Apple, education city. Well, people aren't really associating learning with education, and they're merely searching for the pure meaning of the word. So what then happens if we Google learning? So I did Google learning, and this comes up. Learning theories, learning definition, learning meaning. It seems like Mr. Google has been fed with the keyboard, has been fed from the keyboard of people who love dictionaries. Now, another interesting insight is this, right? A learning keyword search yields a significant number of hits in online learning. So 10 counts amongst 16 hits to be exact. Now, how many here hear the word online learning and feel sleepy? Well, it's not just the 6-year-old eating a lollipop while studying. Ask any university student who has to study Marxism at 8 a.m. in the morning for over an hour online. It's just called human nature. In fact, 90% of the world's schooling youths has had to transition to online learning during COVID-19. But the fact of the matter is, the majority of schools were not prepared for this. Teachers were forced to teach in a medium they were untrained for. Teachers traditionally had to go to a university to get a degree, do certifications in teaching, get retrained, get certifications again, and then get retrained again. None of that exists for online teaching. So how has that changed 2 years into the pandemic? Well, schools and universities have decided to transition back to offline learning and teaching. And online learning is still regarded by many as an alternative solution, inferior to offline education. So to them, it's not the future, it's an alternative. But let me tell you a story. A few years back, some people on eBay, started selling air for $30 a can. And this is air from Paris, as you can see, and then air from the Kanye show, which probably costs a lot more than $30. So air is free. So why on earth would someone pay? Well, tell that to the healthcare workers now. Now, just as the value of seemingly ubiquitous air has skyrocketed during the pandemic, the value of easily accessible internet-delivered learning has as well. Now, in fact, investment into edtech has basically reached $16 billion in 2020. Now, to give you an idea of how large that is, it is 60% higher than the dollar amount that the Vietnamese government spent on education in 2018. Now, the private sector is spending more than a whole country on education. So is it really the government's role to equalize education opportunities? Let's take a look at the government education spending in OECD countries. As you can see, there's a big gap in how much a country spends on education. Some countries are a little bit smaller, some countries are a little bit more, the kind of countries that us Vietnamese tend to kind of want to study in, and, it's highlighted here. And, what we can see here is that this creates a real problem for lower GDP countries, and that permeates education inequality. Now, how much do you think individuals spend on education? Well, before that, let's revisit the philosopher Socrates' idea, right? He said, education obtained with money is worse than no education at all. Let's see the data. Socrates will be flabbergasted, right? Private spending can be as much as half of government spending in some countries. And people are spending significantly more in later stages of education. So you can see here, the square are later stages of educational spending for the private sector. Now, this is huge findings. We predict then that it is likely that individuals and businesses, not governments, will revolutionize education and bring out equal opportunities. Well, when it comes to education, states standardize, we as individuals customize. Now, the edtech ecosphere has already gotten this ball rolling. People of all ages can now speak to a smartphone and learn how to pronounce properly, as in the app Elsa. Adults and youths can learn knowledge on Coursera or from an expert's experience in masterclass. Though these opportunities do require a person to sit down, take time, and focus on teaching themselves. So it's self-directed learning. Now, let's also not forget about directed learning, being taught by a real live person. Now, if the best teachers are made readily accessible via the internet, even to those in remote areas in Sunlam, Mukangchai, or the rural Kazakhstan, then we are all better equipped. Sounds impossible? Well, we've eliminated polio, made effective the COVID vaccine in a very short period of time. What is not possible these days? And in fact, we've already made tremendous strides. My colleagues at CGA have observed first signs of equal access to learning in real life. Students coming from as far as rural Vietnam are getting the same live teaching as older students in Australia. And my colleagues have also seen a connection between active engagement in a live class, despite it being virtual, and better learning, more global appropriate skills, as well as self-satisfaction. Now, better learning satisfaction does lead to better grades, but grades should not guide a person in their learning journey. Grades actually highlight inequality. If you look at UC Berkeley data, you'll see something quite shocking. International students outrank domestic American students on many of the quantifiable metrics. And quantifiable metrics is a fancy term for basically grades, right? These students do not get a spot to learn at the school despite doing better. So what do you make of that? Are grades reliable? To steer your mind away from grades again, let me end my talk with 3 stories I think you'll like. The first is a student with a doting family, a good social background, excellent grades, and very, very good manners. Now, another student comes from a working class family, has low financial standing, terrible grades, and likes to sit in the sun daydreaming. Then another speaks English with quite a number of grammatical errors, often mistakes numbers. He tends to add 1 to 3 zeros to every number he sees, and he did not finish high school. Now, not only that, he lives in the mafia district of Vietnam. So who's a better learner? Who eventually is more educated? Well, we don't know, not in 2021 opportunities, but I can tell you this. The first student, the one with good grades and a good family and good manners, was terribly disappointed when faced with rejection, which happened to him for the first time in his life at 16. The second is happy studying philosophy and insects. Oh, yeah, and people too. And the third, the one with bad with numbers, currently travels the world, recently fixed his mom's home, and now works with numbers. And they're all still learning. And to those who ask, what type of families help kids learn better? Well, we don't have enough data and correlation studies to give you a clear answer on that right now, though my colleagues and I would probably say satellite parents probably emit more greenhouse gases, thanks to the hours on the phone and the voluminous paper usage. Learning is a constant process. Let the online opportunities from 2021 give you power in your own education. Learn always, like breathing. Thank you.